What does a legend wish for? Just weeks before his death, the world of rock has lost its heartbeat. Ozzy Osbourne, the most powerful voice in rock, the godfather of heavy metal, is gone. He took his final breath at 76, and with it, a chapter of music history closed forever. But Ozzy, he was never just a musician. He was a storm, a revolution, a man who turned chaos into a kingdom and ruled it with fire. His passing sent a tidal wave of grief through generations. Fans sobbed, friends stood frozen, and his family? For them, it was as if time stopped cold. But the Prince of Darkness didn't fade quietly. He left like he lived, loud, fearless, unforgettable. In those final weeks, he made a request so raw, so unexpected, even those closest to him didn't see it coming. His soul was clinging to one last dream, and only Sharon, the love of his life, could make it happen. Before we begin, raise your thumb with us, not just as a gesture, but as a tribute, to honor and remember the Prince of Darkness. The house was quiet in those final weeks. A soft breeze rustled through the curtains of their countryside estate, but inside, time seemed to move slower, as if the world was holding its breath. Sharon sat beside him, day after day, her hand gently wrapped around his. Ozzy, once the wildest voice in rock, now spoke in low tones, not because he had nothing to say, but because his body simply couldn't keep up with his thoughts anymore. Parkinson's was merciless. It crept through his body like a thief in the night, robbing him of strength, control, and movement. It was cruel, brutally unfair. The same man who once leapt across stages in a blaze of black leather and lightning riffs now needed help just to sit up. Some days, he could barely lift a spoon. In a rare moment of candor, he once admitted, "The past 4 years have been sheer hell for me. My health has been in a terrible state." Yet even that pain hadn't touched his spirit. His mind, like an old amplifier, still hummed with clarity and power. His wit remained. His timing was perfect. And those eyes still burned with the mischievous spark that once set stadiums ablaze. "This body's broken," he once said with a crooked grin, "but the brain's still partying." Every morning, he asked for tea. Not painkillers, not doctors, just tea and Sharon. They would sit together for hours, sometimes in silence, sometimes lost in time. He drifted freely between decades, his childhood in Aston, the bitter cold, the soot-covered streets, the fights, the hunger. He chuckled at the memory of his first gig, terrified, under-rehearsed, and completely electrified. He spoke fondly of Tony, Geezer, and Bill, the brothers of the storm who helped him birth a genre, and then his voice would falter, grow soft, break a little. He'd speak of his children, Kelly, with her fiery heart, Jack, steady as a rock, Amy, so quietly strong, even the grandkids. "Promise me," he told Sharon one night, voice barely audible, "they'll remember the fire, not the flicker." Sharon bit her lip. She had held this man through addiction, through relapses, through nights of chaos and brilliance. She had seen him destroy himself and build himself back again. But never like this. Never so physically diminished, yet so soulfully alive. The body was quitting, but the man inside was not. Then came the moment she would never forget. It was late June 2025. They sat by the window as dusk settled over the estate. The sky glowed orange. Ozzy stared straight ahead, eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. He turned slowly to her and whispered, "I don't want them to remember a man in a wheelchair. I don't want to be their sadness. I want to give them one last roar." Where it all began. It wasn't just a request. It was a plea, a vow, a final act of rebellion from a man who had spent his life defying gravity. Sharon didn't cry. Not then. She simply nodded. She had one job now, to turn that dying wish into something immortal. The next morning, she started making calls, quiet ones, strategic ones. Ozzy could barely stand, let alone tour. But maybe, just maybe, for one night, in one place, she could give him back his fire. Could a broken body still command a stage? Could the Prince of Darkness rise again, one final time? She didn't know, but she was going to find out. Because behind the failing body was still Ozzy, still fire, still thunder, and his final dream was now hers to carry. For over 4 decades, Sharon Osbourne had been more than a wife. She was Ozzy's fiercest protector, his steadiest anchor, the architect behind his second act, and the sole witness to every storm and resurrection. She'd stood by him through hospital corridors that smelled like bleach and desperation, through interventions that blurred into tears, through screaming matches, relapse nightmares, and glorious comebacks. Ozzy was chaos. Sharon was steel. But now, for the first time, the roles reversed. It was her chaos to face, and her mission to turn one whispered dream into a breathtaking farewell. She didn't tell anyone, not even the children. She held it close, like a secret flame she had to shield from the wind. Doctors said it was impossible. Friends called it dangerous. Even Ozzy, in moments of doubt, begged her to forget it. "I'm done, Sharon. Don't make me a fool," he rasped one night. But she only shook her head. "You're not done. Not until the music stops." Behind closed doors, she pushed harder than ever. She negotiated with managers, coordinated with producers, and fought tooth and nail with medical staff to approve one night, just one, under strict supervision. Every step forward was a battle. But Sharon never flinched. She believed in the power of that moment, the catharsis it could bring, not just for Ozzy, but for everyone who had ever loved him. She wasn't just honoring a final wish. She was carrying out his dying will. She was giving breath to the only thing he had left to say, not in words, but in song. When Ozzy could no longer walk without pain, she helped him rehearse in whispers. When his lungs struggled, she reminded him, "You still have a voice, even if it cracks." And when the tremors in his hands made holding a microphone feel like lifting stone, she wrapped her hands around his and said, "Let the world hear your goodbye." In those silent nights, while the world slept, Sharon was awake, calling doctors in LA, coordinating set lists, begging for permission from specialists who warned her it might kill him. But Ozzy was already dying. What mattered more was how he would leave, not in silence, not in a hospital bed, but as a performer, as a legend. And Sharon understood that with every beat of her breaking heart. Because for Sharon, this wasn't just about Ozzy performing one last time. It was about giving a dying man the dignity to choose his ending. It was about letting him burn bright one final time, even if it meant using the last of his light. It was about giving the world back their Prince of Darkness, not as a patient, not as a ghost of who he once was, but as a storm that could still shake the heavens. She reassembled his old crew. She chose the stadium. She handled every camera angle, every firework, every second of that night with the precision of a general and the heart of a grieving wife. And she kept it a secret, not because it was a surprise, but because it was sacred. Her final gift wasn't just a concert. It was a resurrection, a goodbye wrapped in thunder, a requiem of power and pain, And when she finally stood before him, days before the show, holding the full plan in trembling hands, her voice didn't break. It's happening. July 5th. Birmingham. Your night. Your roar. One last time. Ozzy. And in his weary eyes, through the veil of exhaustion and years of agony, there was a flicker of something almost holy. A man ready to die, but only after singing his soul out one last time. But to understand why that final performance mattered so deeply, you have to go back. Back to where it all started. Because Ozzy Osbourne's final wish wasn't just about singing. It was about reclaiming a life that had once been broken and rewriting its final verse with triumph. His story, raw, brutal, and defiant, was never about fame. It was about survival through sound. Born as John Michael Osbourne on December 3, 1948, in Aston, a tough, working-class neighborhood of Birmingham, Ozzy grew up surrounded by poverty, soot, and the relentless clang of factories. His home had no luxuries. His family scraped by. At school, he struggled, not just with academics, but with bullying, self-worth, and an undiagnosed dyslexia that left him feeling lost. At 17, he found himself behind bars for burglary, sleeping on concrete floors, believing he had no future. Society had all but written him off, and yet, in the middle of all that darkness, he heard music. He didn't just hear it, he clung to it like a lifeline. Music wasn't an escape, it was oxygen. Then came 1968. With Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, Ozzy formed Black Sabbath, a band that would not just change music, but history. Their debut album in 1970 sounded like nothing else before. Heavy, ominous, primal. Critics dismissed it, but the youth of a disillusioned generation heard something real. The pain, the chaos, the raw truth in Ozzy's voice gave heavy metal its soul. Sabbath wasn't just a band, it was a voice for the outcasts, the broken, the misunderstood. And Ozzy? He became their prophet. Paranoid, War Pigs, Iron Man? These weren't just songs, they were battle cries for kids who felt invisible. But even as he soared, the chaos within Ozzy never truly quieted. His demons chased him, clawed at his fame. By 1979, he was fired from Sabbath for substance abuse and erratic behavior. Most thought that was the end, but Ozzy had a way of rewriting endings. In 1980, with the help of Randy Rhoads and a new band, he released Blizzard of Oz, an album that didn't just save his career, it transformed him into a solo legend. Crazy Train became an anthem. Mr. Crowley, a Gothic masterpiece. Diary of a Madman proved that he wasn't just surviving, he was dominating. His voice, unlike any other in rock, carried both madness and melody, anguish and awe. He toured relentlessly. He stumbled, he relapsed, he broke down and got back up. And always, the music was there.